How can we elicit true fear in our players? Keep them sweating, keep them dreading? By understanding one fundamental truth. The human imagination is already so good at conjuring dreadful horrors all by itself that as GMs, all we need to do is exploit that. All we need to do is turn our players' imagination against them using a neat little horror trait called Signs of the Monster. Great! How does it work? Let's look at one of the most common fears of all, fear of the dark. What are we scared of when we turn off the lights? Is it the darkness itself? Not quite. In the dark, our sense of sight abandons us. And if we can't see, how can we be sure that we are truly alone? Add some sounds, an unfamiliar smell, a hot breath on the back of your neck. Now you know that something else is indeed here, but you have no idea what. Your imagination is about to become your worst enemy. We inherit our fear of the dark from evolution itself, from a time where we were prime prey and the darkness could harbor any and every predator. That fear is instinct, deeply ingrained in us. But it's not a fear of the dark itself, it's a fear of what may hide in it. And until we find out what, our minds will fill in the blanks with horrifying things that are probably worse than reality. In truth, what we really are scared of is the unknown. And that, in tabletop role-playing games, is a very easy thing to exploit. If you want to make your players fear any creature, then keep them in the dark. Basically, in horror writing, you don't show the monster, you show signs of the monster. You foreshadow and create a build-up. After all, horror is a game of tension and release, more the former than the latter. It's about creating questions and leaving them unanswered long enough for your players to just marinate in the uncertainty. Now that all of this is said, let's see exactly how we can do that in a few simple steps. Creating cues. It's all well and good to want to show signs of the monster, but perhaps first we should decide what these signs are. Though writing a movie and writing a game are two very different tasks, there is a lot that we can learn from cinema. Horror movies very often rely on building cues or motifs to teach the audience when to be afraid. If every time the shark attacks you can hear this, then the next time you hear it, you'll know that something's about to go down. You have created a cue. In our game, we can do the same thing by creating elements to associate with the monster. It doesn't even have to be a sound. It could be that wherever that monster has been, there is a smell of alcohol in the air, some beetles skittering around the scene. It could be a flash of lightning. The idea here is not to think of a monster as a creature, but as an aesthetic. Not only does that create a cue, it's also a great way to flavor the monster. One example I found that perfectly illustrates this is the strangeness from the game Sleep Away by J Dragon. And Jay kindly gave me permission to show my favorite entity from the strangeness, so here goes. The vibe of Our Lady Oubliette is all about the freezing cold, pleasant falsehood chosen over ugly truth, forgetting and being forgotten, or burying memories in ice. Most of what we know of her are the signs that herald her presence, which in the book are actually referred to as aesthetic elements. Blue lips, frost on window panes, forgotten faces peering from the fog. Introducing her with these, rather than with any concrete information, makes Lady Oubliette a mysterious force. Because telling the players any concrete information, such as abilities or goals, would humanize her. And we don't want that. I'm not saying to not give your monsters goals or abilities. I'm just saying keep that information shrouded for a bit. Building our creatures in such a way is awesome flavor, yes, but it also gives our players a way to identify one source of evil, and it teaches them to be scared of it. Creating mirrors. Horror does not exist in a vacuum. Something can only be scary if something else is there to be scared of it. That something else is likely not going to be the player characters because you can't just tell them they're scared. Unless in very specific situations like possession, you can't just impose on a player how their character feels or behaves. You have to earn their fear, which means they must see the ripples of the monster's presence on something else. A horror movie cannot force us to be scared, but it knows that humans are creatures plagued with empathy. And seeing the expression of terror on the actors' faces does bring out something in us. It acts as a mirror. It could be as simple as involving a witness NPC, and you can make that even more impactful by disrupting all sense of normalcy and familiarity. The players expect to see a scared person, so disrupt that expectation. After all, fear is a natural reaction, and natural means familiar. Get rid of the handholds. Instead, make the witness jumpy, angry, or in denial. Make them try so hard to keep it together and distract themselves that they obsessively keep repeating the same task over and over and over again. Or make them silent, staring into the void, unresponsive to their surroundings. Make them worship the monster because they believe that's the only way they will be spared. Making horror unspeakable. If you have a monster whose powers have unclear boundaries, like demons, ghosts, eldritch entities, you can go even further and have it affect things other than people. You can create environmental effects to show that the monster's mere presence affects the landscape. Strat's domain is shrouded in mists. The demon has caused all the trees in the forest to die. The deers are repeatedly banging their heads against rocks. We are talking about a force so wrong that it bends the environment to its image. When nature and animals are not behaving as they should, it's especially impactful. Pets and cattle can feel it, can scream it, if only we could understand them. Even though the land speaks no language that we can comprehend, it still must express its pain and fear in any way that it can. Breaking the pattern. You remember earlier we talked about creating cues? Creating cues is awesome, but there is also something to be said about destroying them. When you create a cue, you create an expectation through repetition. You create a pattern. Your players learning to expect danger when they come across that cue is great. But if they've survived a few times and that cue becomes the new normal, then you've hit a point of diminishing returns. The players could eventually associate that cue with empty threats. In that case, as you come close to the final encounter, break the pattern, make the signs of the monster evolve. I once had my players trapped and lost in a dark underground labyrinth. The cue I created were two loud bangs echoing in the labyrinth. As they were hurriedly trying to teleport themselves or find a way out, they could hear the two banging getting closer and louder, which is stressful. But later, when they heard only one bang instead of two, it wasn't stress, it was straight up panic. Once they've gotten familiar with the patterns of the monster, there's nothing more disorienting than breaking that pattern and making everything unpredictable and unfamiliar again. Making it last. With a little luck, your players manage to defeat the creature. But after that final encounter, does the dread really have to stop? You could end it there. After all, your players have defeated the evil, they deserve their victory. Horror is a game of tension and release. You do need release eventually. But horror is also a cycle between these two things, ever renewing. If you want to keep the dread alive, the signs of the monster don't have to end. After all, true evil never dies. It can be kept at bay, but never destroyed. Maybe you managed to stop the ritual from bringing this entity into a world, but maybe a shard of its consciousness has slipped into the mind of one of the characters. If you're playing D&D, for example, it could take the form of a new warlock patron, occasionally whispering things in their ear. Perhaps the creature's energy has fled into the weapon that dealt the final blow, cursing it and making it more powerful, but in ways that sometimes are dangerously hard to control. Maybe the fight has left a mark on the character's body, a rune that they can't identify and that keeps getting larger after each morally dubious deed they perform. Signs of the monster can return as mementos, serving then two main purposes. On one hand, they can be useful roleplay prompts and character development, creating a new fear of the unknown, one in which the character wonders if the stain left on them by darkness will eventually twist and corrupt them. And on the other hand, they could be vehicles for more horror scenarios, in which the monster defeated was only the herald of something far bigger and far darker. And that's all I have for tonight. I hope that this will help you become creators of fear. All there is left to do is make use of it. On this note, good evening, and may you find the monster before it finds you.